Day 11, Principle 11. Just, as a recap, these second 6 principles are about how we approach design. And you'll be doing your design phase of the PDC right now. So it's good to sort of use these as your sort of template for thinking. We've given you the Sadiment model, we've given you other sort of designing approach tools, but let's get back to this again. Think about this process is we're designing to fit the bigger pattern. Okay, so that means the bigger pattern might be climate change, the topography, the weather patterns, the needs of the community, the resources of the community. So we're designing to fit patterns, and we're moving from the patterns into the detail. So we've begun from standing far away, and as we get closer and we pay more attention, we move from the pattern process. And the next thing, principle 8 was about how we integrate things together. So we've identified functions. We're trying to think of what our objectives of our design are. And then we identify the elements that we might need, but then we're thinking about how we can bring those elements together so that they become integrated. Now, we might not always know the answer to that. So the reason is we start small and slow. We try things out at one scale, and the things that work, we allow to grow and develop, and the things that don't work, we allow that to inform the design so that it can proceed. So we've got from this integrated design, small and slow solutions. And then we've just looked now at use and value diversity. So again is, how can I bring diversity into my design? How can I, again, create a range of different habitats, a range of different conditions, a range of different ways that people can engage with that design? And the thing that you need to bear in mind about how you're going to achieve that is by using edges and valuing the marginal. The more edges we can bring into a design, the more possibility there is for diversity. And the more we use edges, the more there is then the possibility for different kind of unplanned and very important interactions to happen. So, also we're warned through this principle that just because it's a well-beaten path, it does not mean that you're on the right track. Think about that. There's something different here about this, about not just blindly following. And there's a very huge way in which we are all blindly following sort of this economic paradigm that we know doesn't take us anywhere. We know that is eroding into the natural world, that we know is driving climate change. And yet every day we get up and we do the same things we did yesterday. We need to get off that well-beaten path. We need to find the edges of that system. We need to find the ways out of it. Not just keep trolling along in the same direction, expecting something different to happen, because that's not how it works. Icon is fascinating and it's interesting, and again is plenty of chance for interpretation and projection of your own ideas onto that. So we could be looking at, is that a river or a road? It doesn't really matter, does it? We're looking at the hills. Looks like we're looking at perhaps a stream or river coming away from out of the hills into the lowlands. We're seeing the sun on the cusp, on another edge there. Is it day? Is it sunrise or sunset? Is it the beginning of the morning or at the end of the day? It doesn't matter, but that's an edge time, isn't it? And isn't it really interesting to think about the certain animals and creatures that only really come out at those edge times, the twilight times, or the early morning light times? Certainly, if you go on safari hunting, safari holidays in Africa, it's all about sunrise and sunset. It's all about being at the watering hole for first light. That's where all the interesting things are happening. Interesting things happen at edges. You get new and unexpected associations at edges as well. Um, the edge between the forest and the pasture, the edge between. So there's another interesting one, is the edge between the sea and the shore. You get an area, a tidal area. It's not quite sea and it's not quite land, because some of the time it's, the tide goes in and out. what's very interesting to notice is all the seabirds and other creatures and things, what they're interested in is that the tidal zone of the shoreline, because that's where all the filter feeders are, and that's where a lot of the nutrients are washing around. So there's loads of, shellfish and what have other potential sources of food there. Edges. I'm very interested in social edges, in and especially where they can become productive. So not about social exclusion, but like, well, I'm a little bit, I don't quite fit in your group, but I don't quite fit in my group either. And, and there's a possibility there for new associations, for new things to happen. I strongly believe that new ideas come in from edges, from social edges, from cultural edges. Think about immigrant population, displaced people, migrants, refugees. When they arrive in a new community, they bring with them new ideas, new perspectives, new ways of doing things, new knowledge, and that can interact within a community to really just create a spark of creativity, to create new vistas in new directions. So, designed to create edges, designed to explore alternatives, to explore those sort of nuanced bits. Is it, it's not quite one, it's not quite the other. Um, so the icon of the sun coming up over the horizon with a river in the foreground shows a world composed of edges. Within every land based ecosystem, the living soil, which may only be a few centimeters deep, is an edge or interface between the non living mineral earth and the atmosphere. For all terrestrial life, including humanity, this is the most important edge of all. Only a limited number of hardy species can thrive in shallow, compacted, and poorly drained soil. Deep, well drained, aerated soil is like a sponge, a great interface, supports productivity and healthy plant life. I'm just going to pause because there's something I just wanted to add into that. There's a couple of very, very important thoughts there. One is not everyone agrees with the statement of, I understand what David is saying here, and I think he is making an important point when he says that an edge between the non living mineral earth and the atmosphere, the sort of the living, breathing part. Well, maybe the mineral part of our world is also a living component in a certain way, and certainly within the mindset of many First Nation people is they see everything is part of life. Everything at the end of the day, all matter is energy condensed and vibrating at a certain rate. So there is nothing is really solid, and everything ultimately is moving around. We have minerals within us that return to soils when we die or compost, and those again exchange back through the plants. But let's go on about this idea of this edge, the soil as an edge, and this is a very interesting thing of way of thinking about it, because in our soil lectures and our studies of healthy topsoil, what we discovered is really healthy, productive topsoil is about 50% air by volume, or maybe moisture. Imagine it's 50% spaces that allow air and moisture to circulate within it. So is it land or is it air? It's half and half. Soil itself is a living, breathing edge. And soil itself also breathes. So the water within the soil is attracted by the pull of the moon and will rise and fall with the lunar seasons in the same way as the tide does, which pushes out stale air and draws in fresh air. The soil itself is breathing. So increasing the edge between field and pond, increases the productivity of both. Alley farming, shelter belt forestry can be seen as systems where increasing edge between field and forest has contributed to productivity. The proverb, don't think you're on the right track just because it's a well beaten path, reminds us that the most common, obvious, and popular is not necessarily the most significant or influential. Some wise words of warning within that. So, think about edges. And within the statement there, use edges and value the marginal. Is, sometimes it's that quiet voice at the back, the person who didn't quite articulate their ideas, that maybe they hold the key piece, or marginal species, the things that we fail to think about because maybe they seem insignificant, is, well, maybe they turn out to be the most important part of a system. There's giant sequoia redwood trees that we see in the Pacific Northwest, some of the largest, most magnificent species on Earth. Their seeds struggle to germinate if they haven't passed through the gut of a particular kind of vole. Value the marginal. We need to understand that there are relationships going on between things and that we might not understand them all. And therefore, we need to value every element and understand, how it in some way contributes to the whole. Thank you for that. Oh, no. Sorry. Oh, before I go, yes, I left the same picture up. And from the previous principle, not least because within this garden we've tried to create edges. We have water thrown through. There is a river Kyne. We've planted trees along the edge of the river, a riparian edge, because that's very good for wildlife and biodiversity, stabilizing the banks, reducing the inflow of particulates and nutrients that might damage or change the water course. We've created open spaces because that invites people in, the walkers, the frisbee throwers, the picnickers. Another kind of edge. Dense clusters of trees, which then creates another whole sort of set of edges. Footpaths, willow coppice. Each element that we've brought into the system, we've done it in a way in which we've tried to create another sort of unique set of conditions, another edge, which then might create opportunities for different kind of associations to form, for people to interact with the garden in a different way, and build ongoing process of building those relationships. Okay,